call to order the Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, April 18th, 2024. Please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Patzner, please call the roll.
Commissioner Knobloch?
Here.
Commissioner No?
Here.
Commissioner Heikla is absent. Commissioner Casey?
Here.
Commissioner Smolke is absent. Commissioner Geisler?
Here.
Chair Schwartz?
Here. Thank you. Our first order of business this evening is to adopt our agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Casey, second by Geisler. Any additions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the agenda is adopted. Next, we have the approval of the minutes of our March 21st, 2024 meeting.
Chair Schwartz,
Commissioner Knobloch,
I move that we approve the minutes from the previous meeting.
Second?
motion by Knobloch, second by Noel. Any additions, corrections? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the minutes are approved. Our first order of business this evening is planning case 24-5, a conditional use permit for MSP demolition at 3050 Coon Rapids Boulevard. Mr. Patzner.
Thank you, Commissioner Schwartz, members of the Planning Commission. I do have a presentation here. I'm going to try and pull it up real quick. So the first order of business, this is Planning Case 24-5, a request for a conditional use permit by MSP Demolition for Suite 110 of 3050 Coon Rapids Boulevard. And I'm having a little bit of trouble getting to my presentation here. I apologize. It's still a AV system that I'm not entirely familiar with. Let me see if maybe I click something here. There we go. Perfect. So the location is 3050 Coon Rapids Boulevard. This is a multi-tenant commercial building along Coon Rapids Boulevard, adjacent to the Oxbow Bend Apartments to the west and the open space park area around the Coon Rapids Ice Center to the south and east. The location of the requested conditional use permit is the southernmost unit of 3050. This is the former Chase Coal Galleries. This is the largest unit of the multi-tenant building. It's about a quarter of the total square footage of the building. It looks like it's more than that, but I think it's just about a quarter of it. And it's been vacant for a little while now. The zoning for this property is in the Port Campus Square zoning district. And there is a little bit of HDR, high-density residential zoning to the west. That's the Oxbow Bend Apartments. Otherwise, everything around it is also in the Port Campus Square zoning district. And then for land use, it's guided in the 2040 Comprehensive Plan commercial mixed use, allowing commercial and residential uses. And then here's just an image from Google Maps of what the vacant building looks like. So this is while it was still, had the Chase Coal Gallery signage up, but Chase Coal Galleries had moved out. And so this unit had been vacant for a little while there. So the use that's being proposed, MSP Demolition is a residential and commercial demolition contractor. And so they would be classified under the use service business with showroom or workshop, including office warehouses. That's the title of the use. This would be a service business and an office warehouse use. So that what they're proposing are offices and storage space for equipment and materials for their business. There would be no showroom or really any workshop. It just would fall under that use. So that is a conditional use in the Port Campus Square district, and there is no existing CUP on Suite 110. And the way that the city has been approving CUPs for 3050 Coon Rapids Boulevard, they've been by suite. So if there's a CUP on a different suite in that multi-tenant building, it would not apply to Suite 110. So the applicant does have to come and apply for a separate conditional use permit in order to be allowed to move into Suite 110. So it's about 8,230 square feet, this particular unit of the 32,000 square foot multi-tenant building. And this section of the building, it's screened by a fence to the south and the west sides, screening it from Oxbow Bend Apartments. There's also significant evergreen vegetation on the west side, screening it from Oxbow Bend Apartments. The other tenants are to the north, and there is vacant or park space around the Coon Rapids Ice Center to the south and east. So the applicant is proposing a general daytime business, 7 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday through Friday, use of the site, with employees using the building as an office space as well as a staging area for the demolition activities. There would be no clients coming to the business on site or showroom or any reason for clients to visit the site. So it would be mainly just used by the owner and employees themselves. So what the applicant is proposing is about 3 to 5 office employees taking up about 2,400 square feet of the building, whereas the remainder, the other 2/3 of the building would be warehouse, storage of bulk construction supplies, tools, building materials, possibly vehicles, though I'm not entirely sure whether that door is able to be accessed by, there's a vehicle door. I don't know if all of the employee vehicles are able to access that door. But the applicant is also proposing to store some employee vehicles on site. And so these would need to all be, vehicles in working order, and would be stored in the parking spaces on site. So there wouldn't be any outdoor storage allowed of trailers or equipment or anything other than a working vehicle, as a proposed condition of approval for this CUP. And I'll get into that a little bit more when I talk about the proposed conditions of approval. My understanding is that the applicant would be storing about 5 company vehicles, though the applicant is here tonight and might be able to speak to the actual vehicle count if it's different than what I'm describing here. So in terms of parking, the space it provides more than enough parking for the proposed use. So with the office space and warehouse space proposed, that would be about 12 spaces needed for the office and 6 for the warehouse, so 18 spaces in total. There are 33 spaces dedicated specifically to Suite 110, so there's plenty of spaces. If they would be storing 5 company vehicles on site, there would still be multiple spaces left over beyond what's needed and what's being used for company vehicles. In order to max out the parking that's shown, 5,600 square feet of the building would have to be office, which is far more than what's being proposed. So they're well away from ever maxing out that parking requirement. So staff are suggesting conditions mostly related to the exterior of the site, with the goal that if it's approved, that this use would not have any negative effect on neighbors or any other uses surrounding that site. Most of these conditions are related to vehicles or anything else that's being stored on the outside of the site. So requiring that vehicles are parked in striped parking spaces when not in use, that no inoperable vehicles or non-roadworthy vehicles are stored outside, no junk vehicles or anything like that. Nothing other than vehicles, materials, equipment, trailer are being stored outside of the buildings, trailers are being stored outside of the buildings, and that parking spaces required for the site based on the parking counts remain free and unoccupied by long-term storage of company vehicles. So staff do have suggested findings. These are included in the staff report. I'm not going to go over them right now, but staff generally are of the opinion that this use would be appropriate for the building and for this unit of the building. It's been vacant for a while, and there haven't been any other uses proposed for this unit of the building. And it is large and generally surrounded by similar uses or vacant space for the most part. So staff do find it to be an ideal location for something like this, and there wouldn't be any work or repairs or anything like that going on outside of the building. So staff find that there'd be little likelihood of the residents of the adjacent Oxbow Bend apartment being negatively affected by this use moving into the site. So with that, staff are recommending approval of the proposed conditional use permit, and this would be approval by the Planning Commission. It doesn't need to go to council. There is a public hearing for this item, and the applicant is available to answer questions. With the conditions listed that I went over earlier with a couple of standard conditions added, staff are recommending approval. So that's all I have in terms of a presentation. I'll let the Planning Commission take it.
Thank you, Mr. Patzner. Commission, any questions for Mr. Patzner?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Geisler.
Mr. Passer, could you walk me through a little bit of, specifically, no trailers other than road legal vehicles? So for example, like a fully enclosed trailer with maybe branding on it. Is there a reason why we don't want to allow that to be stored in a parking stall? I mean, it seems like kind of a typical thing we would allow in many other places. I understand materials and equipment, but specifically a road legal trailer that would be towed behind, say, a truck, is pretty common. Just curious how staff landed on that one.
Your point's taken well, and I think the staff opinion is possibly on the stricter side. If a trailer is road legal, it is not out of the ordinary for it to be stored outside on a site. The thought process was simply that we wouldn't want to have the parking lot taken over by trailers that aren't ever connected to any vehicle and are essentially just exterior storage on wheels rather than being a vehicle that's actually being moved to and from the site. However, there are lots of situations in which a trailer is a reasonable use on the site, and those conditions could be edited to contain a little bit more nuance and allow kind of standard road legal trailers while still disallowing exterior storage.
Would there be some interpretation that's maybe closer to our derelict vehicle review of where, a vehicle hasn't moved in multiple days, weeks, kind of an interpretation that may be more flexible to allow that type of use? I mean, what I worry about here is we're asking them to pull in all trailers that would normally be stored outside in, frankly, any other commercial area where we'd be doing this, inside of the building instead of, but I understand, agree, the external storage extension is not the intent.
Thank you, Commissioner Geisler. I agree with that. I think that referencing the derelict vehicle ordinance and standards in the city code could be a good way to rewrite these conditions to be a little less strict.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Chair Schwartz,
Commissioner Knobloch.
I have a question for Planner Patzner. Excuse my ignorance in regards to the operations of a demolition business, but my only question is, can it be clarified, will there be any temporary materials of a demolition job or materials at any time stored or temporarily held on the facilities in the order of business? Or is that a moot issue? Is that something that's taken care of off-site?
Thank you, Commissioner Knobloch. I would probably defer that to the applicant to answer, as they will likely know better than I do.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? Anything the petitioner would like to add? If so, please come to the microphone. Give your name and address for the record.
You want my name and my personal address or the site address?
The business address, I guess, is sufficient.
Ben Zeckmeister, about 3050 Coon Rapids Boulevard, Suite 110. I don't really have anything to add. Would you like me to answer the question, though?
Yeah, please,
Yep.
'cause
Absolutely. When was the question about materials?
yeah, any demolition materials or items from the course of business
Yep.
temporarily, or would there be any storage of demo material on site?
Yeah, good question. Demolition is a little unique in that we're removing materials, go to, job site dumpsters. So what we're gonna be using this building for is staging of, tools, supplies, sundries. So, excuse me, we're gonna have some racking, that we'd like to put up and have saw blades, plastic, tape, dust containment poles, so really smaller items like that. We don't have cabinet deliveries or millwork packages or framing. That's gonna be getting delivered and stored inside. So pretty much, our crews have tool trailers that are enclosed that they'll just need to load and unload tools, specialty equipment, that kind of stuff, so.
Wonderful, thank
Yeah,
you.
does that answer the question?
Definitely.
Okay, perfect, thanks.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Geisler.
If I may, of the applicant, do you think it's a burden to pull in the trailers inside of the building every night? Or is that not an issue for you, or would you be doing that for security of your equipment anyway?
Yeah, no, I appreciate your question on that. So the height restriction of the overhead door would not allow any enclosed trailers to get pulled inside. So we don't have the intent, like Max was saying, to use any trailers as storage, so I appreciate that perspective. But it would be helpful, you know, if a truck and a tool trailer were dropped off for the weekend or overnight, that would be considered an appropriate use for that location. Just in that, the leads using the company trucks would sometimes leave their, usually they take them home with them, but sometimes if they're going out they've got weekend plans, they'll leave a truck and trailer, so if that could get parked, until the next, work day or something, that would be, helpful on our standpoint.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it's strictly Monday through Friday, no Saturday, Sundays?
Our normal operating hours will be Monday through Friday. Occasionally, we will have work on weekends and night work that we would do on the job site would not typically require us using the facility, but we might need to go grab something for a job that's, you know, after hours work based on the job site that we're working on. But our office staff would be set hours Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30. So outside of those hours, you know, if we were on site, it would be a tool trailer coming up, loading some plastic or saw blades up, and then heading out to the job site, so.
And in addition to your technicians that go to the various sites, how many employees do you anticipate more or less being staged or working strictly out of the office?
We've got 3 office staff, myself included. I've got 10 field staff. 3 are my leads that are driving the trucks and trailers. So I've got 3 crew trailers that would be coming and going from the field. So.
All right, anyone else with any questions at this time?
Yeah.
Commissioner Casey?
So that one door that was shown on the graphic, that would be a garage door,
Yep.
so to speak, only accommodates vehicles,
Correct,
not trailers or,
correct, yep. Yep.
would you you'll be taking vehicles in there to load or unload? And then out?
No, yeah, typically what we'll do is we'll back the trailer up to the overhead door, and then open the door and then load in from there, just because they won't fit inside.
Yeah.
And we don't have any service trucks that would be pulling in all of our stuff is in enclosed trailers, so. Which, that overhead door is really nice, because if you got, carts or something, wider equipment, we can get in and out of the trailer. Nice, easy access versus like a service door, 3-foot service door. But yeah, we wouldn't be getting any vehicles really inside.
And that's the only overhead door?
On that level, they have an overhead door above into the unused attic space, I think you saw in the picture. But yeah, that's the only, overhead
Street
door,
level.
yeah. Was there, oh yeah, that was part of the other unit. There's another overhead door on the second floor for whatever reason, I'm not really sure. That's not in use. So.
Thank you.
Won't be getting any vehicles up there.
Any other questions? All right, we may have more questions later, but for now, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we do need a public hearing in this matter, so at this time, I will open a public hearing in planning case 24-5, a conditional use permit for MSP demolition at 3050 Coon Rapids Boulevard, Suite 110. Anyone wish to speak to the public hearing? Anyone wish to speak? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and limit comments to the commission.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Geisler.
I have a question for Mr. Puccioni. With respect to the derelict vehicles ordinance, since that's just an ordinance anyway, do we need to specifically reference that, or would that just be applied through city enforcement as normal?
Commissioner Geisler, good evening. That ordinance you're referencing, the it would be enforced through the administrative citation process, regardless of what you chose to do here.
Thank you, so.
So there isn't a need to alter conditions? Is that what you're saying? There is no need to alter the 8 conditions?
Mr. Chair, Planning Commissioners, if I may, my understanding is that the conditions would still need to be altered because the conditions currently are stricter than the derelict vehicle code, and thus we would be imposing an extra
Layer.
restriction, a layer of restriction on the applicant compared to just removing that condition, which would then defer it to this derelict vehicles code. So my understanding would be to achieve that end, we would just want to remove that condition that references trailers.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Commissioner Geisler.
I actually would prefer to revise it, and if I may, I would actually move that in planning case 24-5, that we approve this planning case with the following conditions that are listed, with the revision to item number 6 to read, no materials, equipment, or items other than road legal vehicles or trailers may be stored outside of the building overnight.
So deleting the word trailers.
Moving trailers to the road legal after they're allowed, as long as they're road legal. That would be my motion.
I'd second that.
Okay, motion by Geisler, second by No. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. This is a decision by the planning commission and can be appealed to the city council within 10 business days if someone so chooses. Good luck. Our next case, planning case 24-6, preliminary plat for Cedarwood Townhomes, Cedarwood Homes LLC. Mr. Platzner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission. This is a request for a preliminary plat for Cedarwood Townhomes at 9730 University Avenue. This is kind of a unique case. This is a item that was already approved, or the site plan, sorry, for this townhome development was already approved in May of 2023. However, the applicant is coming back to request to plat the site. The apartments are already under construction and they were approved as one single site. And the applicant is requesting to plat multiple units in different lots for this site. So the location is on University Avenue, just north of Highway 610. And yes, I got that right, thank you. And this is just a little bit closer looking at the location, surrounded by mostly other residential units with some businesses on the southeast and north end of the site. This is zoned high-density residential, or HDR, and guided high-density residential as well. And it was rezoned to high-density residential from medium-density residential back in May of 2023 during the original proposal. I think these slides are slightly out of order. I'll just start by showing a rendering of what was approved back in 2023. So it's 8 essentially identical townhomes on the lot. And what's being proposed by the applicant now would be to divide that lot into 8 lots and 1 outlot. So 8 lots with 0 lot lines. So those would be coterminous with the townhome buildings, including the porches on the back of those buildings. So each unit would be an individual lot, and then everything surrounding the units, including the courtyard, parking, open space, everything that would be considered the grounds essentially, would be part of Outlot A. And the applicant is proposing to continue to own all 8 units. There's no future intent to sell any of these units, and I'll go into a little bit more the reason for platting if there's no future intent to sell in a little bit. But the units are intended to be owned by the applicant and kept as rental units. However, in platting these units, it does create the ability to more easily sell these units off. So there are a couple conditions that staff are proposing around this plat to protect the city in case these units ever do become for sale units in the future. So this is what the plat would look like as a final plat. So, townhome units are permitted in the HDR district, whether unplatted or platted. The classification would technically change from multifamily dwelling under the new definitions that were approved this month by the city council from multifamily dwelling to townhome, but there's no practical difference to how the unit would be considered. It would just be technically considered a townhome unit. This is still permitted in the HDR district. And the reasoning for the request is that the applicant would like to install a 13D fire suppression system instead of 13R fire suppression system, which in the building code requires the unit to be designated as a townhome occupancy as opposed to a multifamily dwelling occupancy. And in order to do that, the individual units have to be on separate lots. So this is a technicality around the building code that I personally was not aware of before this project. But the applicant is requesting to plat so that they can install the smaller scale fire suppression system, which in my understanding, based on my conversations with the building inspector, are in no way a lower quality fire suppression system compared to the 13R. They're just unit by unit instead of one central riser room for all of the sprinklers, but they provide the same level of fire suppression in a practical sense. So what's being proposed are 0 lot lines. So this is the lot lines that are coterminous with the units, including the rear porches. And these are used regularly by the city in townhome developments, both the MDR and the HDR zoning district. Notably, there's another townhome development owned by Value Homes as well, just to the south of that also has 0 lot line platting for the unit, so each unit is on its own lot. And the lot standards have historically been applied to the entire site rather than each individual lot. So the lot standards listed in the HDR district refer to the lot as in the entire site when considering 0 lot lines, as opposed to requiring each individual lot to be to meet the size requirements listed. And I can go a little bit more into that by request, but that's sort of the understanding of how this is generally looked at. There was a setback issue around the original approval back in May 2023, but this was resolved with a variance later that year. I think it was also in May of 2023, so that was planning case 23-02V, and so that setback issue has been resolved. So the conditions that are being suggested by city staff, mainly the applicant would need to create a homeowners association around the development, and this would protect the city to ensure that the city is never made responsible for maintaining the site in the case that lots are ever sold in the future. So if any of lots 1 through 8 are sold and there is no entity maintaining Outlot A, this homeowners association requirement would ensure that an entity is created now. So in any future case that happens, they would be responsible for maintenance on Outlot A, and that would never fall to the city. A second condition would be that a cross-access easement be dedicated over the entirety of Outlot A. This would just ensure that in the future, owners of lots 1 through 8 would never be barred from accessing their own properties, and park dedication fees would also be required as part of the plat. The HOA and the cross-access easement are very unlikely to come into play since the applicant is planning on continuing to own and rent out these lots, but these would just be in case in the future it's ever under different ownership in order to protect the city. So the recommendation by staff is that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the preliminary plat to council with the conditions listed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Platzner. Commission, any questions for Mr. Platzner on this case?
Mr. Patzer, so the property that this same owner has that's just south of it, is that also owned to rent? Those aren't, they haven't been sold, that they hold, Home, or Value Homes owns that.
I believe it is. The applicant is here and would be able to confirm that, I believe, but my understanding is that those are still owned to rent.
Okay, thank you.
Chair Schultz?
Commissioner, no.
In the event they do decide to sell these down the road, whether it might be 20 years down the road or whatever, as the HOA is set up, is there plans to have like a reserve fund that goes in there monthly? So if they do sell, new owners would have some kind of reserve fund?
This would have to, thank you, Commissioner, no, this would have to be worked out in the details of the HOA document. I don't know the answer right now. We do have a standard set of agreements around that. It wouldn't be between the owner and the city, it would be between the owners of individual lots, and it wouldn't come into play unless any of those lots were sold. But my understanding on that is limited, but it would go to the standard HOA agreement.
Any other questions right now? All right, anything the petitioner would like to add? Please come to the microphone, give your name, address for the record.
Good evening, Eric Olestad, and business address is 12301 Central Avenue Northeast in Blaine, Minnesota 55434. And to answer your question, yes, it's actually owned by CR12, just an LLC, owned by me on the 12 townhomes just south of there, and it's all remaining with me and just renting them. And then as far as the HOA and reserves, there's, if it was to get, eventually start selling units, you have to kind of get all that in place, and in order for like somebody to get a conventional loan, then they have to see the HOA financials and all that, and you put that together, and that's when you kind of need it for financing purposes at that point, and kind of build up a reserve or start it up then when you go to sell. Otherwise, I'm not sure, and it's kind of difficult to know exactly how that works, but I know that there's rules and regulations on that.
And it's not your intent to sell, you're going to
No.
hang on to them.
Yep. This is just because basically the building official, and the people from the city, and then the fire marshal, we were just trying to figure out the best way to do it, and they kept saying, well, you gotta split them up, and at first it was like, oh my gosh, I don't know, this sounds difficult, but then we just came to the conclusion that, okay, yeah, let's make them individual townhomes so we can have that 13D, and it's way simpler, and they each have their own line going in, and it just makes more sense.
Any other questions, Commissioner? All right, we may have more questions for you later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we do need a public hearing on this matter, so at this time I will open a public hearing in planning case 24-6, the preliminary plat for Cedarwood Townhomes, Cedarwood Homes LLC. Anyone wish to speak to this public hearing? Anyone wish to speak? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, limit comments to the commission. Commission, your thoughts?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Geisler.
question for Mr. Patzner here. Looking at the plat here, just to understand the boundaries of this relative to the structure, is it basically each one of these platted blocks is just the structure, essentially? And there's no grass, no driveway, no nothing? All of that is contained on Outlot A?
Thank you, Commissioner Geisler. The rear of the, each individual lot would contain the porch and then an area of grass directly to, adjacent to the porch. So there would be a small amount of yard, all enclosed by the sidewalk, that would be part of these individual units. It's not entirely just the structure, but it is very close to being just the structure.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Casey,
I will make a motion
all right?
in planning case 24-6 to recommend approval of the preliminary plat with the following conditions. Of all engineering comments be addressed if applicable, park dedication fee of $16,000, $2,000 per lot for 8 lots be paid prior to releasing the plat for recording. The applicant draft and provide to the city a homeowners association agreement to be made between the owner of Outlot A and the owners of lots 1 through 8 prior to releasing the plat for recording. And finally, the applicant provide to the city dedication of a cross-access easement over the entirety of Outlot A to benefit the owners of lots 1 through 8 prior to releasing the plat for recording.
Second that.
Motion by Casey, second by Knobloch. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. This is a recommendation by the planning commission, and a decision by the city council will be made at their May 7th meeting. Good luck. All right, our next case is planning case 24-7, an ordinance amendment for MDR and HDR district standards, city code sections 11604 and 11605. Mr. Patzner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission. So we do have the third section of the residential code revisions that were being proposed by staff. This would cover sections 11-604 and 11-605, the MDR and HDR districts, with the same goal as the other sections to align the zoning code with modern building techniques, the needs of existing residents, and with state statute. And so this was brought forward in a work session with the Planning Commission, and I believe 2 work sessions with the City Council. So they have gone back and forth a few times and been updated and changed. And so this is what staff's proposing is based on conversations with the Planning Commission and Council in those work sessions. So I'll just go over the main changes being proposed to the MDR and HDR standards. And I should be able to bring up the entire red line sections if there are questions covering anything that is not covered in this presentation. But the main sections being proposed to change for the MDR standards include increasing the maximum density of the MDR district from 7 units per acre to 9 units per acre, and this would keep the minimum at 4 units an acre. So the goal with this would be to align with the density that's generally seen in townhome development applications, some of which have been required to request a rezoning from MDR to HDR. And these are for townhome developments and not apartment developments. And so staff thought it would be reasonable to increase the maximum unit per acre density allowed in the MDR district in order to better accommodate the applications that have kind of been common in the last couple decades. Change to the common open space requirements. So staff are proposing reducing the required common open space per unit from 700 square feet to 550 square feet. So currently 700 square feet of open space per unit is required. The reduction to 550 is a smaller reduction than was originally proposed. Originally, staff had proposed 450 square feet per unit, but in conversations with the Planning Commission and with City Council, there were concerns that that was too low and too big of a change, so staff did increase that from 450 to 550 square feet per unit. And staff find that that's a more reasonable ask for townhome proposals and for medium-density residential proposals, as 700 square feet per unit ends up oftentimes being a very large percentage of the development. Staff are also proposing to reduce the minimum dimension required for common open space from 50 feet to 20 feet. So currently the city code requires that anything designated common open space has to be at least 50 feet in any dimension. So there would be a lot of unused space in developments that could be usable as open space but would not meet that 50-foot requirement. Staff are proposing to reduce it to 20 feet. The original proposal was to move that requirement entirely, but staff felt that some minimum dimension should be kept in order to avoid something that's infinitesimally small being considered open space. So they would have to be usable space, and a dimension of, or a requirement of 20 feet in any dimension it generally would be considered an open space that could be usable, staff found. And then open space being restricted to recreational, scenic, and conservation purposes. The original proposal was to remove this restriction, but based on conversations in the previous work session, staff are proposing keeping that restriction, and staff agree that open space should be restricted to uses that are usable for the residents, recreational, scenic, and conservation, and they shouldn't be given over to any other uses. Staff are also proposing a change to the private open space requirement. Currently, 400 square feet per unit are required. Staff are proposing 350 square feet per unit for the same reason as the reduction in the common open space requirement. Staff are proposing to keep the existing requirement that at least one space per unit is in an enclosed garage and at least 1/2 space per unit is in a common parking area. This was originally proposed to be changed, but staff have revised that proposal to keep that requirement. The section for children's play areas is proposed to be changed basically to remove all the specific requirements. There are multiple detailed specific requirements currently in code for waiving the need for a children's play area in a new townhome development, replacing this with just the requirement that the applicant document why a play area would not be useful and why another amenity would be useful instead, and that would be subject to approval as part of the development application. So just reducing the number of requirements needed from the applicant in order to argue for removing the requirement for a children's play area. And then changes to the setbacks, basically to remove setbacks that are based on building height and make setbacks standardized and clearer for staff and the applicant to understand and to administer. And then in 11-605, the HDR district, staff are proposing many similar changes. There would be no change to the density requirements in the HDR district. The minimum would be proposed to still remain at 7 units, so there would be an overlap between MDR and HDR for anything between 7 and 9 units an acre, which staff finds appropriate to allow some flexibility for developments in that in-between space. There would be the same reduction in the minimum dimension of common open space, but no change proposed in the amount of required open space per unit. And an addition or some language would be added to the section to require that any development that with units that are platted as individual units have an HOA, and this would be very similar to the condition that's being imposed on the Cedarwood townhomes. The children's play area sections and the setback sections would have the same changes proposed as the MDR changes, essentially to align with the changes in MDR. So that's an overview of the changes that are being proposed, and staff do recommend approval of the ordinance to revise these standards. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Platzner. Commission, any questions for Mr. Platzner?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Geisler.
Mr. Pastor, just a clarification on the, when you say would be approved for, like, in lieu of a play area, you mean that staff would assess that and planning commission would decide on that? That's how that would practically work?
Thank you, Commissioner Geisler. That's true. That's how that would practically work, as opposed to a rigid set of standards that would need to be met by the applicant. It would just be discretionary by the Planning Commission and Council.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Platzner at this time? All right, we need a public hearing in this matter, so at this time, I'll open a public hearing in planning case 24-7, an ordinance amendment for MDR and HDR district standards for city code sections 11-604 and 11-605. Anyone wish to speak to this public hearing? Anyone wish to speak? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and limit comment to the commission. Commission,
Chair Schwartz.
Commissioner Knobloch.
I just want to commend the Planning Commission and Planner Patzner and the crew for all the work in aligning all the requirements in the work in this proposal. That it's, I think it'll be very helpful to have everything streamlined, be more logical, more efficient. So thank you. That's it. Just a comment.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Geisler.
I would Move to recommend approval of, in planning case 24-7 for the ordinance revising moderate and high-density residential standards, which amend city code sections 11-604 and 11-605.
I'll second that.
Motion by Geisler, second by Knobloch. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? And that motion carries. This is a recommendation by the Planning Commission. Will be introduced by the City Council at their May 7th meeting, and the decision by the City Council at their May 21st meeting. Thank you to city staff for all the hard work on this. All
Thank you, Mr.
right, moving on to other business. Mr. Patzner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Planning Commission members. I just wanted to briefly go over the applications that we have in the May agenda. This is just something that I'm habituated to doing and just help prepare the Planning Commission for what's coming down the pipeline. We have 2 applications in so far, and it is past the deadline, so that it is only going to be 2 applications in. Sorry about that. The first application is a site plan for IDC Automatic at 360 Coon Rapids Boulevard for an expansion of their building. And so they're proposing to add 25,570 square feet to the existing 23,000 square foot building and consolidate the 3 lots on their site. So the proposal is for a site plan for them to do that. And the second proposal is for rezoning of the community garden parcel on University and Butternut that's connected to or associated with the Peace Lutheran Church for September Sun, a developer who is proposing a 28-unit townhome development. That proposal for the 28-unit townhome development is further out, and they haven't applied for that yet, but they have applied to rezone the site from office to medium-density residential as a first step to eventually applying for a site plan. So those are the 2 applications we have in, and I just wanted to go over that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Commission, anyone have anything for other business?
Mr. Chair, I wanted to also, before the end of the meeting, just briefly address a staffing update. We have hired a second planner finally, so Kurt Behringer will actually be starting on Monday. He joins us from HDR, which is a large engineering firm. He's worked as a consulting planner for a number of years, and in previous roles has worked for some smaller cities around the region, so he comes to us with a fair amount of experience. As it relates to Planning Commission staffing, Max will be your main staff liaison, although we do plan on having both Max and Kurt handle planning cases, so you will see both of them periodically, and we'll just divide up the workload accordingly. So we're excited about that. Obviously, we were sad to see Dakota Kroll leave us. He was with us for just under 2 years, left us for the city of Bloomington, but we'll be excited to be fully staffed up here in the coming weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. And is that Kurt with a K or a C?
Kurt with a K.
All right, thank you very much. And Commission, anyone else with anything for other business?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Geisler, second by Casey. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting's adjourned.